days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. 49ers offensive key matchups for the Seahawks is what's on the docket for today. This is one of my favorite parts of NFL football and 49ers in general, is going through and finding the key matchups that are going to help determine who wins the game. Now, there's going to be a lot of elements that go into this. It's not just going to be the offensive key matchups or the defensive key matchups, but these play a vital part in that. Of course, if you can win these matchups, it means you can win the things that normally help you win the game, which is time of possession, right? Turnovers. Winning the turnover battle is extremely huge. Red zone efficiency and third down efficiency are usually the key ingredients to how you're going to win a football game. But when you're playing a divisional rival like the Seattle Seahawks, you know the team pretty well. And so discovering what those matchups are going to be is significant to see how Kyle Shanahan plans on attacking a McDonald defense that's done a pretty good job against the 49ers over recent memory, whether he was in Baltimore or last year when he was with Seattle. Now, the offense scored a lot of points in their first matchup, but the second one at Levi Stadium, really, the Seattle defense did a good job of holding the 49ers more in check. And, of course, Seattle ends up winning that football game down the stretch on a Geno Smith scramble touchdown with barely any time left. So these two teams were pretty close last year. 49ers won in a big fashion. You scored 38 points. Some of that because they created turnovers on defense. And then the next time it was a close battle with Seattle winning and holding the 49ers to just 17 points. So this is going to be an interesting battle between two teams that are familiar, coordinators that are becoming more familiar with each other. And I love the fact that we're going to get to talk about the offensive side of the ball, where now you're going to have a returning Christian McCaffrey. You're going to have a George Kittle that always does good against Seattle for whatever reason. You have Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who was a Seahawk. Now he's a 49er. How is he going to play into this? And, of course, that impressive Seattle defensive line against the interior part of the 49ers offensive line. And we got to talk about the tackles against the edge rushers as well. But this is why I love football, because all these matchups matter. It is 22 players on the field. It is 11 on 11, but there's a lot more that goes into this. The chess match is real. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network, please give it a 5-star rating. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And with FanDuel, you can bet on the outcome of the 49ers versus Seahawks. The 49ers are favored at a 2.5 point win. So if you think the 49ers are going to win by more than a field goal, this is something that you can bet on for them to win. But there's all kinds of cool stuff. There's same day parlays. There's lots of prop bets that you can bet on the 49ers players, what they're going to do, or the Seahawks players and what they're going to do. The over-under for this game is 43.5. So you guys can say, hey, this is going to be a high-scoring game, bet the over, or, it's not going to be. It's going to be a defensive battle. You can bet the under. Of course, this number last year for the first game, 49ers for Seahawks, the over would have won. Of course, the next time, the under would have won. So interesting matchup between these two teams. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm looking forward to getting into this. And we're going to start talking about these key battles. And I want to start on the inside. I want to talk about the Seahawks defensive line, especially those guys that are going to play the interior portion of the defensive line against the 49ers interior offensive line. And I know this is going to spill into the tackles a little bit because you're going to get those Seahawks defensive ends that line up inside shade of the offensive tackles for the 49ers at times. And in the run game, that could mean you're dealing with a big Leonard Williams, or you're dealing, with a Jaron Reed. It definitely can be something that they have to handle. But the interior part of the offensive line for the 49ers, that has to be the biggest question mark. Now, Dominic Puni is coming back from injury, and he says he feels pretty good. He likes his chances to be able to play. I do as well. And I think Dominic Pooney really set himself up for a big season as long as he can stay healthy, because he played really well down the stretch. And that was even hitting the rookie wall. So this is a guy that has the ability to potentially go to the Pro Bowl this year if he can have a consistent season and keep building off what he did last year, which was a very successful season. Now, that's a good thing because the 49ers have question marks about the other two positions. Jake Brendel's been the mainstay at center for the 49ers over the last few years. His athleticism is the key ingredient to making him really fit within this 49ers offense. But the thing that they love the most about him is his intelligence, his ability to pick up, when blitzes are coming and slide protection and make all the necessary calls that he needs to make. That is what keeps him in the starting lineup for the 49ers. The athleticism to be able to get to the second level in the run game, and then the ability to make the calls on offense. That is the job that Kyle Shanahan has asked his center to be able to handle. And Jake Brendel, like him, hate him, it doesn't matter. He handles that part of the game pretty well. And so those are some of the things that put him in this lineup. But when you look at some of the players that he's going to be going against, in some cases, it puts him at a disadvantage. We'll talk about that in 1 second, because we also have to talk about Ben Bartch. And Ben Bartch is not only going to be, taking over that left guard job from Aaron Banks, but he's also dealing with a little bit of an injured elbow. Now, he's going to be wearing the elbow brace, and they think that he's going to be able to be effective. Matt Hennessy's been wearing the same elbow brace for the entire part of the preseason, and he's done a pretty good job, not to the level of Ben Bartch, of course. So Bartch is going to be another key element. And why is it so important for that interior part of the offensive line to be successful? Well, they've just got to hold up against a very good defensive line for Seattle. Leonard Williams, who I bring up pretty much every time I talk about Seattle, because the dude's a monster. And he's gotten better since he played in the Seattle scheme. And I think he's been featured more. They've done things to really help him. But some of it is McDonald does a very good job of, using the players that are going to make plays and putting them in positions to be successful. That's one of the strengths of a good coordinator. Find out someone's strengths and let's put them in situations where they can use those strengths. Let's locate their weaknesses and let's keep them out of those situations. Some teams use it better than others. Some guys fit schemes better than others. I think Leonard Williams really fits this Seattle Seahawks scheme, and that's why he's had a lot of success over the last couple years. Then last year they drafted Byron Murphy, and I thought that there were moments where you saw, this dude is going to be a real problem. And then there were moments where you're like, yeah, he's still a rookie. But I think that now he's coming into year 2 and he's rounding into form. I think he's going to be difficult to deal with on the interior part of the Seahawks defensive line. That is a big concern for me, is Byron Murphy one-on-one with Jake Brendel. And we know the 49ers don't usually allow one-on-one looks, especially for Jake Brendel. They want to make sure they give him help. They want, a lot of times for him to feel comfortable because he doesn't have the anchor. And when I'm talking about the anchor, I'm talking about that ability to sink his hips, lock in and be able to hold these guys off. That's not something he's going to be able to do. We talk about his strengths being get to the second level, that speed element, love that part of the game, the intelligence. But when it comes to pass blocking, lateral quickness, he's great. He can move side to side with you. But if you've got a beast, and they've got 3 of them, and that's not even including Hankins, who's not playing, they can drive you straight off the ball. So this is going to be one of the things Jake Brendel's going to have to try to do, anchor, and the 49ers are going to have to try to give him help to not allow him to be on one-on-one. Now, what is McDonald going to do? Well, the first thing he's going to try to do is find some of these one-on-one matchups he feels like he can take advantage of. Number 1, can I get somebody on the interior one-on-one with Jake Brendel by showing blitz and making them adjust? That's first off. Second off, how can I get one of my key rushers one-on-one with Colt McKivitz, which has been something interesting. Now, it could also be Ben Bartch, because Bartch isn't exactly the best pass blocker. He's good. He's effective, but that's not his greatest asset. So the 49ers really have to establish a run game in this football game, and it's not going to be a big part of the interior offensive line. Like, they're not going to run a lot of inside zone plays, or I think they're going to try to press this thing outside. So that will alleviate a little bit of the pressure on Brendel, Barch, and Pooney, but they've got to be effective when it is called upon, and they are a big part of the outside zone scheme. So the outside zone scheme is something you're trying to push to the outer part outside the tackle's hip, and you just want to push this thing, and you want to push it, drive it until there's an opening. Then you want to get vertical as a running back. Now, that will make defensive linemen run down the line of scrimmage, which is exactly what you want. Now, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, they're still athletic. They can still move sideline to sideline. That's what makes them unique. They've got the ability to push you vertically and the ability to run with you horizontally. However, if you continue to do this, you will systematically wear them down. That way, when you get to the fourth quarter, they're just not quite up to speed, and you can kind of start taking advantage of the run game more consistently down the stretch. But it's no easy matter, because if they stop you in the run game on first and second, and they earn the right to pass rush you on third down and it's third and long, I worry about the 49ers offensive line holding up. Now, I don't worry about Trent Williams. He'll take care of business. Holt McKivitz has been effective for the most part. Dominic Pooney will hold up. But Ben Barch and Jake Brendel are your concern. Now, if Seattle only rushes 4, I think the 49ers will be okay. If they start bringing blitzes, rush 5 to try to force Brock Purdy's hand, you could get some matchups that don't sit well with that interior part of the offensive line. So you got to run the ball effectively. You got to stay ahead of the sticks. Staying ahead of the sticks means making sure that you never get to a third and long. You want, second and medium. You want third and short. Those are great situations for the 49ers offense and their effectiveness. But it's going to be some key battles. And Leonard Williams is an absolute monster. The way that he has been able to, move guys around. The first matchup against Dominic Pooney, he got him a couple times. Against Trent Williams, he got him a couple times, which was a little bit of a surprise. So it's going to take a concerted effort to make sure that they can move the ball. But if they can get that outside zone game going, they can get those toss plays going to the outside, which have been effective. Seattle sometimes will be over aggressive, and then you can kind of cut back against the grain and create some opportunities. Also, Kyle Shanahan can create some other opportunities in the run game using guys like Sky Moore with a little push pass, those types of plays, maybe a jet sweep, a couple of screens to kind of get this thing horizontally spread, I think could help out a lot. So that's going to be one of the key matchups, those interior defensive linemen against the 49ers interior offensive line. Now, before we go to another area, I kind of want to focus on the Seahawks edge defenders against Kittle, Farrell, and Juice. And the reason being, if you're going to run outside, as the 49ers do, you've got to be able to take advantage of those guys. Now, what Seattle did in the offseason, bringing in DeMarcus Lawrence, that's going to help them immensely against the run. He does a very good job. Before last year, you had an opportunity to take advantage of them, with guys like Nwosu or Boye Mafi. You can get movement on the edge. So what the 49ers would often do is you take advantage of the gap that is between the tackle and tight end. So you just want to take advantage of that hole there. And a lot of times with these guys who walk up on the edge as these edge rushers off the outside, you've got a lot of room to play with. As a 49ers defense, we see the wide 9 a lot, which means the opportunity to run the ball is usually somewhere near that C gap, right? That you can run the football. And that is the same thing with Seattle. So what the 49ers want to do is get a push, get that guy moving out. Don't allow him to set a hard edge. That way it creates space. Then your offensive line can go ahead and pick up some of those other guys. So how do the 49ers do that? Well, usually what they do is they do one of two ways. They get the tackle and the tight end to get a huge push on that guy, and then Juice will come up in the hole and try to fill on somebody there. Or what they've done a lot of this, they've done this against a lot of 3-4 defenses over the years, especially the Rams, is what they do is they get George Kittle or Luke Farrell blocking that defensive end. Then they send Kyle Juszczyk full speed to run over and hit him as well. and try to get an extra surge before one of them breaks off to the cornerback or safety. So expect to see some of that. And if they can get movement, that's going to be very beneficial. Now, one of the problems is it's a lot harder to block a guy like DeMarcus Lawrence, who is a very stout player on the edge. So not only does he provide pass rush, but he provides pretty good play against the run. So that's gotten a little bit more complicated. He's not built like a traditional, outside linebacker pass rusher. So that's going to be a little bit harder. Now, Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk have done this in the past, and they've been effective, even against DeMarcus Lawrence in games where they played the Cowboys. So it's not out of the question they can handle this, but that's going to be one of the key blocks, how the 49ers go about making that happen. And there's a variety of ways you can do that. You can start with Juice at fullback in the backfield and send him directly there. You can start with Kyle Juszczyk lined up off ball as a move tight end and move him across the formation in motion, allow him to get a running head start to help with George Kittle to get that movement. So there's a couple of different ways. They could also go 12 personnel with 2 tight ends and have Farrell and Kittle go after it. But I think the overall target will probably be guys like Nwosu and Boye Mafi, who are a little bit easier to move around. So when going out there, that's what they're probably going to try to do, is get that. If they can get a push, they're going to be able to run the ball effectively as long as they can get bodies on the inside linebackers. And one of the easiest ways to do that is by having guys who are hyper athletic. And the good news is, with the guys that they have, Colton McKivitz, Dominic Pooney, Jake Brendel, Ben Barge, Trent Williams, all of them can move, and they can move effectively in the zone run game. So this is a big part of this game plan, is if you can get the guys moving on the outside, you can alleviate some of the pressure on the interior part of your offensive line, and not just the run game, because they're really good effectively at getting to the second level, not so much at getting an internal push on plays they've got to take guys head up, which is a strength of Seattle. So that's going to be part of it, because all that builds into play action pass off of that. When you get teams moving horizontally after that outside zone play or those toss plays, then Brock Purdy can half roll. He can roll out with the boot, and he can find players coming back the other way, whether that's with the flood pass or other targets down the field. So it's kind of one of those things where you marry the run game to the passing game. And that's how the 49ers are going to be the most effective, especially early in the season. They want to run this offense through Christian McCaffrey. They want to run this offense through George Kittle. It's not that they don't have weapons. They still do. Jawan Jennings is back. They've got Ricky Pearsall, who's expected to have a big season. Marquez Valdez-Scantling can stretch the field vertically and open up some of the things in the middle of the field. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But it all is predicated off this run game. And I think everyone knows the pound the rock style has got to work for the 49ers. It helps them with time of possession. It keeps the defense off the field and keeps them fresh. It keeps Sam Darnold on the sidelines and allows this 49ers offense to take control of a football game. And so this is going to be one of the keys. But when you are play action passing, because your run game is effective, it engages linebackers, creates open voids. It engages safeties, creates opportunities. So there's lots of things there, but it also takes the pressure off your not so good pass protectors, right? So guys who struggle a little bit in traditional pass sets, which are just, 3-step drop, shotgun, things that aren't movement based. Those guys, they're really good at run blocking, but sometimes they can be not as effective when it comes to pass blocking. That alleviates a lot of it. And that's what we've seen the 49ers be effective with in Kyle Shanahan's time in San Francisco. And that's what they're going to try to do again in this one. So that's going to be the key matchups, on the interior part of the offensive line. And then with George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, and Luke Farrell against those edge defenders, DeMarcus Lawrence, Boye Mafi, and Nwosu, those guys out there, it's going to be a key. Now, beyond that, there's another key. Because, yes, Christian McCaffrey is going to be very important to this matchup. And one of the things that Kyle Shanahan's going to try to do in this game is get Christian McCaffrey matched up against the Seattle Seahawks linebackers. It's not that they're not hyper athletic. It's not that they're not very talented players. It's just Christian McCaffrey lined up against a linebacker is advantage 49ers. All you have to do is go back to 2023 when the 49ers played the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1. And that was one of the key matchups in that game as well. And it was interesting because those guys were hyper athletic and very talented linebackers as well. And then Christian McCaffrey came out and had a day, whether that was running the football or catching the football. When Christian McCaffrey is 100%, he is very tough to deal with. And from everything that I saw at training camp, from everything that I watched, I've read everything about Christian McCaffrey, he's back. The explosiveness is back. And so this is going to be one of the key things. Can Kyle Shanahan scheme it up to get Christian McCaffrey one-on-one with Tyrese Knight or Ernest Jones? Now, I think that there's going to be times that McDonald puts a safety on Christian McCaffrey or even a nickel corner, depending on the personnel grouping. But that's okay, because when that happens, you can find matchups for somebody else that you like. Maybe you get George Kittle one-on-one with those linebackers. And we know that when they run zone coverage, it's not one-on-one, and that's okay. But what you do get is leverage in those zones, right? And Christian McCaffrey is one of the best at those choice routes, being able to decide if he goes inside or outside. And so this is going to be a key element. So McCaffrey is going to be very important running the football, the vision, explosiveness, ability to get vertical and get as many yards as he can, but also his ability to catch the ball in the backfield. Because one of the things that's made the 49ers offense very good over the last several years has been the versatility. Well, Deebo Samuel's not here. And I don't know how much we're going to talk about Deebo Samuel this year. Hopefully not very much when it comes to the 49ers, because this offense is moving in a different direction. But when you're talking versatility, you still have one of the most versatile pieces in the entire league with Christian McCaffrey. And so being able to get the most out of McCaffrey's touches is going to be one of the key elements to this season. You know you have to limit the amount of times he takes hits, the amount of times that he has the ball in his hand, because you just want to make sure he can make it through all 17 games and be healthy if you're going to have a shot at making a run in the playoffs. But you also want to make sure you get him the football when you have a chance, because there's nobody on this 49ers team, besides probably George Kittle, that is as dynamic with the ball in their hands as Christian McCaffrey. He's one stiff arm, one hurdle, one juke away from a big-time play, and he does have enough juice to potentially get a touchdown on the play. He's a lot of times he's going to get ran down. Seahawks secondary is extremely fast. But why I think this is a key matchup is because Tyrese Knight, though he's a young guy, is extremely talented. I broke him down in the draft process. I loved him coming out. I think he's a very talented guy, a lot of inexperience, but he's coming around. Last year was a significant improvement for Tyrese Knight and his ability within their system to develop into a really good football player. But Christian McCaffrey just makes it tough for all linebackers. Why do you think guys like D. Winters or Nick Martin, if they get Christian McCaffrey during one-on-ones and they actually stop him from catching the ball, they go crazy? Because they know how difficult that's going to be. So McCaffrey's got to take advantage of those matchups, and that's part of the reason that Kyle Shanahan loves motion. He loves shifts. He loves manipulating personnel groupings, so he can get matchups for Christian McCaffrey, who is still an extremely versatile weapon for him to be able to use. So this is going to be one of the fun matchups of this game, is watching Christian McCaffrey versus Tyrese Knight. I think occasionally it'll be Ernest Jones. Sometimes you might even get one of the safeties to walk on down. Maybe they'll go a 3 safety look too. They haven't been afraid to do that in the past. Maybe you'll get some Nick Emenwari on him, which would be remarkable if we could see that. I think that would be very exciting. I'm a big fan of Tyrese Knight. I'm a big fan of Nick Emenwari. I think the Seattle Seahawks are pretty talented. I just think the 49ers still have some really good offensive matchups that they could take advantage of in this. And I think one of them is Christian McCaffrey versus that linebacker group. Now, the last matchup I want to talk about is not so much player-based, but coaching-based. And here's why. So one of the key details to this game, and you're going to hear people talk about it all week. They've probably already been talking about it, and they're not wrong. That 12 personnel, 21 personnel groupings for the 49ers. And a lot of times you're just looking at the inefficiencies at certain positions, and they're pointing to the wide receiver room and say, hey, we just need to run a lot of 12 and 21 personnel when we only have 2 wide receivers on the field. And that is great in theory. That's exactly what you hope. You hope you can come out in 21 and 12 personnel, run the ball effectively down Seattle's throat, and then be able to kind of throw off of that. And then you don't really have to worry about 11 personnel and 3 wide receiver sets very often. Here's the problem. If you are going into a game and that is your only thought process is we're going to run 21 and 12 and your run game's a little ineffective, because I can tell you right now, I think Seattle's going to come with some heavy looks against the 49ers. And what do I mean by heavy looks? I'm expecting 5-6 man on the line of scrimmage sometimes, and putting the onus on the 49ers to use those offensive weapons. So it's one of those things where sometimes, yes, you can just line up in whatever you want and that defense just can't stop you. In other cases, you've got to be able to think on your feet. And I'm sure Kyle Shanahan's going to be prepared for this, is when they come with those heavy sets, be willing to manipulate their personnel groupings. So you want to run 21 and 12 personnel when you're going to get the matchups that you want. Maybe you get a Christian McCaffrey one-on-one with Tyrese Knight by them sitting in that 5 or 6 man front. That's advantage 49ers. But if you're planning on running the ball, it might be a little bit more effective and easier if you get them into their nickel situations. All of a sudden, you get one of their extra edge defenders off the field in a nickel corner on the field. And I'm not saying that it's always the best way to go, but sometimes it's better to have one of your key blockers, be able to handle it. You could put Jawan Jennings in the slot. Jawan Jennings is a heck of a blocker. And if you get him lined up against the nickel corner for the Seattle Seahawks, that could be advantage. Or even him coming in and blocking the linebacker. He can do that. So there are matchups like that. Sometimes it's better to create space, get a smaller group of individuals on the field, and run the ball that way. So Kyle Shanahan, early on in this game, with his first 20 or so plays, is going to try to determine what types of looks he's going to get from Coach McDonald. What is McDonald going to do personnel? How is he going to recognize each different personnel grouping? When Kyle Juszczyk's out there, are they going base set, or are they still going to go with something else? I expect them to go base. So with that being said, then what type of front are you getting? A heavy front, a 6-man front? Or are you getting a 5-man front? Are you getting 8 guys in the box? Or are you getting 7? If you're getting 7, you can run the ball effectively. If you're getting 8, how many are on each side of the ball? You split the field down the middle. You could run effectively to one side or the other, depending on what the numbers look like. So there's a lot of elements to this game plan for the 49ers. I don't think it's going to be as cut and dry as we're coming out in 21, 12 personnel. That's what we're doing. We're running you over. I think there's going to be a lot of elements to that. I think we are going to see a lot of 21 and 12, but I think we're going to see some 11 as well, because I do think with certain matchups for the wide receivers, certain matchups for George Kittle, sometimes space could be very important. Also, if they're going to run 6-man fronts, why not throw out of that? Which means if you're in 12 personnel, Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle have to be effective in winning their battles again against linebackers and safeties. So there's opportunities that can be created, but it's all about figuring out what the defense is going to do and then how can I best take advantage of it. And the reason I think Seattle is going to come out and try to load up a lot like Seattle did with the Raiders game during the preseason is if you can effectively stop the 49ers run game and make them more one-dimensional, it plays into your strengths because you have a very good secondary in Seattle. They cover really well. And if you can get to 3rd and long, and the 49ers are not able to run the football, you get some of those one-on-one matchups, and they have the ability to lock you up across the board with some of their talented corners. I do think the 49ers have some receivers that can win, but, how many times are you going to win in a row? And so I think that they're going to put the onus on Brock Purdy. They're going to put the onus on this wide receiver room, George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, to win. And that's why some of this is some of the key matchups. Now, when you have the opportunity to run the ball, absolutely run the ball. I'm not saying don't run it. I think it is going to be a heavy run game for the 49ers in this one. But if it's easier to run out of 11 personnel, do it. And I think that's the thing. The path of least resistance is what Kyle Shanahan's going to try to take advantage of. And when it comes to Mike Macdonald, the dude's extremely talented. He's going to bring blitzes. He's going to make it difficult. You need 3rd and manageable, staying ahead of the sticks. So it's not so much about just running the football, but it's about being effective on 1st and 2nd down. Whether it's a 5-yard slant or a quick little boot that gets George Kittle 5 yards, whatever it is to stay ahead of the sticks, that's important. If it's as easy as giving it to Christian McCaffrey or Brian Robinson, letting them handle business and fall forward 5-6 yards, that's great. But I think it's going to be a give and take. I think this is going to be some drives are going to work out well for the 49ers, and then some of them, they're going to have to kind of figure things out. Can they execute on third down is going to be one of the keys in this game. Getting sustained drives. How many sustained drives can you have in this football game when the time of possession is going to be key? So the key matchups, I think, on offense for the 49ers, the Seahawks interior D-line versus the 49ers interior offensive line, both in the pass game and the run game, but especially in the passing game. Seahawks edge defenders versus Kittle, Farrell, and Juice, and even at times offensive line. I think that's going to be another key to see if the 49ers can run the football. CMC versus Tyrese Knight and Ernest Jones. I think that's going to be an important matchup to see if you could take advantage of Christian McCaffrey in space. I like that matchup for the 49ers. And then Kyle Shanahan versus Mike McDonald when it comes to personnel groupings. I think that's going to be a key. And Kyle feeling out, yeah, we can run out of 21 and 12, or if they're loading up, we can throw out of 21 and 12. That's the thing. If you want to load the box, you create some opportunities for George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, and Christian McCaffrey in the passing game, and even Ricky Pearsall and Jawan Jennings. So it's just an interesting dynamic. I love it. Maybe we'll see them run out of 12 and 21 a lot, or maybe we'll see them have to run out of 11 and throw out of 12 and 21, which means maybe we'll get a couple Luke Farrell catches. Who knows? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. This episode was brought to you by FanDuel. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.